Hey there, thank you so much for tuning into our podcast. But before I take you to your show, I have a very small request to make. Do check out the other episodes that we have created so far. And as you know, we are available on all major music and podcast streaming apps across the world. So, whichever podcasting platform you're listening to, do hit the follow button and leave us a rating, as that will help us improve our content and reach a wider audience. And with that, welcome to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Say That Again, Mate. Priya, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Also, pardon my beautiful horsey voice tone at this moment. Throat infection alert.
Well, you sound sexier than the rest 10 episodes, if I must say that.
It's like Phoebe from Friends. If you got the reference, guys.
Yeah, you got
Okay.
it with your sexy phlegm.
So before the third voice that you're hearing, let me introduce to the third person who has been there in this podcast, and a great human being, a great friend, and someone who has a lot of content in him, and someone who I think just one podcast isn't justifying his presence. We are gonna make a lot of more podcasts with him going forward. And please, everybody, Bharat Dixit on Say That Again, Mate. And this episode is going to be all about stories, conspiracy theories, space, drugs, everything you can
Nice.
think of. So, welcome, Bharat. How are you doing?
Hey man, I'm good. Thanks for having me here. It's so nice to be with you.
I always looked forward for this episode right from day one when we started this podcast. I kept on talking to you like, let's do one. Today is the date after like 10 weeks of
Yes,
podcasting.
finally.
Finally. So there we are. And Priya, one thing I must tell you before I introduce Bharat and we get into the deep discussions is that he has a great convincing power for anything. Like, even if you are a teetotaler, you have never had a drink, a drop of alcohol in your life, and if you visit him one Saturday, he'll ensure that you have something, and that should be good, and that must be good. I think the way he makes it and the way he creates it for you and puts the glass in front of you, you're gonna love it, and you're never gonna deny that, okay, fine, I'm gonna have that drink, but just for today. And then you'll
Yeah.
end up
When are
having
you
5
visiting
more.
India then? Bharat bhaiya?
I'm gonna come on 30th of September.
Oh,
Soon.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
But
Always.
anyway,
Also,
yeah.
before starting this, I told one of my colleague, as I mentioned before, to KG Bhaiya in this podcast series, that she was really astonished by the fact that we started podcast actually, and she came up with this question because I told her that in the next episode we have this conspiracy theorist with us, and I was very excited to share that news with her. And so she said, oh really, I'm also into watching these stuff, and could you please ask one question? So gradually, when we'll proceed, KG Bhaiya, I'm gonna ask this question to Bharat
Of
Bhaiya,
course.
which so I have this in mind. So Charisma is her name, and I'm
Okay.
gonna
So,
address
of course,
Charisma's question.
towards the end of the episode, we must ask.
Yes,
And
Definitely.
yeah.
yes.
So anyway, before we proceed, I hope this episode is completely based on the research that Bharat has done and some things that I have also done based on different sources that are available on the internet mostly. So yeah, and there we go. So let's address the elephant in the room, Bharat bhai. Marijuana. Let's talk about it.
Well, you started with the most controversial topic around mate.
I know that because everywhere around you can smell it, but it's illegal. I don't know why.
Yes.
Why is it illegal if it's available everywhere and everyone is smoking? I mean, especially in Mexico or in India, if you go back to, you'll in colleges and all these institutes, even in corporates, in high-end meetings and high-profile parties, you'll find these drugs available to people, although it's illegal. So yeah,
Right.
this stage is yours. let's
Okay.
talk
So
about
see,
it.
when we
Yeah,
talk about legality of marijuana, it's a
yeah.
very controversial topic, first of all, because we do not have a lot of data on it, or let's say any data on it, right? And why
Okay.
we don't have any data on it? Because it's not legal. We do not have that much funding or research available to do the research, in fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, mostly when we say marijuana, it is illegal and it's going to stay legal for the foreseeable future because it's a drug and all the drugs are harmful. Okay. No one can say that marijuana is a good drug. It reduces your pain, it helps with your appetite and stuff like that. Yeah, it's all there. Okay. There is alcohol that also helps with your pain, right? Nicotine also helps with your anxiety at a certain level. So, saying that marijuana is illegal and it is still being consumed is a wrong statement. A drug is not consumed because it is illegal. And actually, it's a very different story there. It is consumed actually more if it is prohibited. So
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
why we
exactly.
smell it all around because maybe it's prohibited and not regulated. Okay. So people who argue that marijuana should remain illegal, okay, they come from three viewpoints. Okay. There are the three main reasons that I think that they come from. Okay. Let's talk
Mhm.
about the first one, that it induces psychosis, right?
Okay, what is
That
psychosis for our listeners?
psychosis, yeah, is a kind of a psychological disease. You might have heard of schizophrenia, right? A lot of
Mm-hmm.
panic
Yes.
attacks. You're in a panicky state. Okay, that is, those are the forms of psychosis, right? Psychological diseases, right?
All
So
right.
what happens is people say that some of the online stories, if you read, people would say that when I started smoking, when I started taking THC into my body, it helped me a lot with my anxiety, with my panic attacks, with my depressions. But when you go to some other forums, you will find the complete other story. Okay, people would say that after smoking weed, my anxiety actually got worse. Okay,
Correct. Yeah.
so now psychosis is directly related to high THC content. Okay, what happens is initially in 1990, when you had a bud of marijuana, you only had 4% of THC content in it. But a research done in 2014 found that the THC content has increased up to 14% in the same quantities.
Wow.
Okay, right? That is the difference that has happened. Okay, and this is because of prohibition, right? When a substance is prohibited, growers will try to make it more potent, make it more stronger so that they can store more of the THC in less quantities and make more profits that way, right?
And make people more addicted to it so
Make
that,
people more addicted, make more money, right? With the
yeah.
same, yeah. So, I mean, you have given a 300% rise in the amount of THC that marijuana had, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
is directly related to the to psychosis cases because marijuana has two components. We all know that THC and CBD, right? THC is the one that gets us high, we feel all good and stuff, and CBD is the one that counteracts the effect that THC causes, right? CBD
Okay.
is the one that is considered in the treatment of anxiety, in the treatment of panic, in the treatment of psychosis, right? We have a lot of CBD oils, CBD waves nowadays available, right? So
In
it,
cancer treatment also, we have
yes,
heard
we are
that.
exploring it, but I don't think that there is any
All
evidence that
right.
it is helping with that, right?
Oh,
But
all right.
marijuana in general, it helps when you are going through cancer treatment because you are very, very nauseous, right? During a cancer treatment. So marijuana basically it has that properties. It is used in Ayurveda for a lot of times when you have to stop controlling vomiting. So it is a very great medicine for vomiting. Even if you have a lot of alcohol after that, if you are vomiting a lot, I prefer just having two puffs of weed and it goes away. So that is a very, very effective remedy for nausea.
Okay.
Okay, that is home remedy who used in Hindu homes for very ancient times since the Vedic culture. Okay, so let's go back to our topic. Okay, we were talking about CBD, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Now, what growers did is because CBD has no visible drug like effects, okay, it's more of a medicinal way of use. What growers did, they slowly genetically modified and they increased the THC content and reduced the CBD content. So, at the moment, the case is that your marijuana mostly has only THC. And when you smoke that, it has a higher addiction rate. It gets you bombed instead of getting you a smooth high. Okay. So, these are the problems that we see currently in the marijuana that we have. However, there was a recent study conducted which found that the schizophrenia cases that were there in 1990 did not
Mm-hmm.
increase exponentially. The cases are almost the same that we had around 20 or 30 years back. So that
Okay.
study indicated that marijuana is actually not inducing schizophrenia or any cases of psychosis. But yes, if you already have it, there is a chance that it might develop faster than it is supposed to with high use of marijuana. Right. Now, when it comes to legalization, people say that, okay, since it is linked to high cases of schizophrenia or development of schizophrenia for people who already have it, let's lock it away. Let's lock weed, less psychosis, right? That is a
Okay.
directly proportional relationship. Okay. Lock it
Okay.
away, we won't give it to people and they won't have it. But there, everyone forgets that prohibition only makes it more wanted, more potent, and
Correct.
more stronger. Okay. People, drug dealers are able to ship more of their product in smaller spaces, a more potent product. Okay. We are not talking about the quantity of the product itself here. We are talking about the drug content in the same amount of product. Okay.
Okay.
That
Okay.
is a lot more. Okay. I'll give you a very good example. Okay. In the past, in the 90s, there was a alcohol ban in the United States. Okay. They banned alcohol.
Okay.
The direct result of it was that a person who comes from office in the evening, okay, and he would take a glass of wine or a scotch or a drink, right? Something
Right.
like that, okay? Those population shifted over to hard liquor because that was the only thing available. Okay, no one was making wines or supplying these rose wine and red wine in black market. Okay, people would go for hard liquor. Okay, because they can take a drink and get bombed with that, and
Hard
that is the
liquor
case.
hard liquor as in
Ha-
what do you mean?
Hard liquor is in any alcohol with 40% content, right? That
Okay.
those are our hard liquors, okay? 48% alcohol, okay? And then
All
we
right.
have beer and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
people in the United States mostly, or in the Britain, people mostly go for beer and stuff like that, right? We know that, right? But yeah, those population columns shifted over to hard liquor because when a stuff is prohibited, it is always more potent. It gets more potent no matter what is the case. Okay. And another problem with non-regulated weed is that it is very strong. So you do not have an option to stay normal. So you have only two things, right? Either you don't do it or either you get bombed. So the weed that we are getting nowadays, the potency is so much that you just cannot not get bombed. It's very similar to getting home after office and having a bottle of alcohol, right? Instead
Oh,
of
damn.
having a drink. That is
Mm.
what the potency level is, right? So even if you want, you cannot have a drink. You will need to have a bottle. That is so. This is again one problem that we are creating with not regulating marijuana. If we are able to regulate it like we are able to regulate alcohol, we get a say in the choices we get. We can request a low THC content marijuana sample, right? We can,
Which is not that harmful for your
which is
body and
that
mind.
not harmful, yeah, and maybe with more CBD content, so people with uh, already who have developed some cases of psychosis or who already have a lot of anxiety, they might be helped with that.
Okay. So basically,
Okay.
I understood your point here. So like
Mm,
we say that alcohol is regulated all over the world. So we find different levels of alcohol, hard
right,
drinks, soft drinks, alcohol with 3% alcohol,
correct,
drinks with 3% alcohol content
yes,
to 40-45% content. And it depends on what
right,
you want to consume. So
correct.
similarly, if there's a regulation for weed, we might be able to find something with less THC content and more CBD content, or somebody who really wants to like go to the highest level of
Exactly.
yeah.
And along with that, yes, you will have a lot of variety. So maybe I only want to get bombed over a weekend, okay? Then I'll take a 12% THC content marijuana, right? But on the day, maybe I just need 2%, okay? I don't want to get addicted, okay? This also helps you with reducing addictions, right? Lower the THC content, less people will get addicted. And even, it also helps with a technique of what you call draping off when you're quitting any of the drug, right? You slowly
Mm.
cut off your consumption. So that is something that also is going to help with that. So there are a lot of benefits that I see of regulation instead of non regulating it. Okay. And
Okay.
I would also like to say that is actually legalization is not a way to promote any of the drug, but it is actually taking responsibility about the threat it poses to the society. And it
Currently,
is
yes.
it is through regulation only that we can control those threats. Okay.
Yeah. illegally which is happening. Also, Bharat bhai, I have a question here because many of our listeners might not be knowing what is CBD, what is THC.
Mm.
Also, I wanted to know marijuana and hemp is a hot topic right now. Like,
Right.
which is better, which has THC more or CBD more?
See,
I'm yeah,
initially, it's all made from cannabis. Okay, you say cannabis. You might have heard from cannabis. Okay,
correct.
we had two varieties, two species of cannabis that is found on Earth. We had cannabis indica and cannabis sativa. Okay, sativa was mostly found in the Western countries. What I have heard is, I don't have a lot of data on it, facts on it, but yeah, it was mostly found in the United States. And sativa that I know is found in India. Okay, that is where the name comes of for. Okay, indica, that because it comes from India. So sativa indica, so it they are like different, they have different effects on you. Okay, so sativa, I think, is mostly called a day drug, where you take it and you're, super active and stuff like that. Okay, whereas indica is called the night one, where you take it, you get all sloppy and sleepy and your mind wanders off and you're just lying on the bed listening to music and thinking about that stuff. Okay,
Hmm.
but
Huh.
but when this colonization, after this wars and the colonization period started and everything, right? When the world started getting smaller, people took all those varieties and they were grown everywhere. So if you go and look for it today, you won't find any pure varieties. Okay, it's all a mixture of everything today. Okay,
So for
and
marijuana, you're saying, or the hemp part? Hemp.
marijuana, yeah,
Okay.
hemp is
Oh.
just a lower form of plant. I think we make bhang from it.
Yeah, I
So
was
bhang.
about to come to that point.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
bhang is a form of cannabis, right? It's
Yes.
it's from
Yes.
that plant itself, and
Hmm.
it's regulated in India. I mean, you can find it in government authorized shops,
Yes,
and in
it's
Holi
regulated.
and all, it's like
Yes.
very commonly consumed in families and
But
holy
I would
parties
say
and
that
all.
the THC content is still much lower than you find it in modern day marijuana, especially here in Mexico. You look at the bud, okay? You look at the bud of it. Go to India, find a bhang plant or a cannabis plant, a desi plant, what we call it. Look at the flowers in it, okay? Today, you buy weed, okay? You go to any drug dealer, buy weed. You would find 2-inch buds, okay? A bud's size of your finger. That is not natural at all. That is not how a flower is supposed to be, and it is only because of genetics. They are so genetically modified that the flower gets so much bigger to hold a lot more THC content than it is supposed to be. So the
Mm.
same flower, the same plant that was supposed to produce, let's say, 100 gram of it, is now producing 400 grams. Okay, because the flower size is 4 or 6 or 8 times than it was supposed to be 20 years back.
Okay. So
Right. So
just
that
just
is,
not that
yeah,
we know of any drug dealers, or we haven't seen any
yeah,
such
I know.
flowers.
Yeah. Well,
Is
you can just Google it, man. Okay, most of
yeah.
it is, you just watch some documentaries and you would
This
find videos where it's shown.
this is all the research from the internet, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes,
There's
it's all
nothing.
research. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and
Continue,
if you
please.
talk about which is more, which is less, okay, that is not a correct question. If you talk about the society that we live in, because it's all genetically modified. Okay,
Hmm.
you can genetically engineer to have any amount of potency that you want it to have. So it's like that. Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's just like doctored medicine.
Hmm.
You.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's like a lab-made drug. Okay, you're
Hmm.
growing it naturally, but still genetically modified, right? So
Okay.
yes,
So okay, fine. This is about cannabis and the THC content and these
yeah,
things. But
right.
okay, we have seen this culture growing in the recent past that countries have started to legalize it and
Hmm.
to regulate it. Like we all
Right.
know that Netherlands, Amsterdam is famous for it, coffee shops where you can
Correct.
just go smoke a
I was
blunt.
gonna, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
but there is a story to it too. Okay, let's come to our second point. Okay, we discussed the first point, psychosis and these cases of anxiety
Sure.
and stuff like
Sure.
that. Okay, due to the high THC content. Let's discuss other points. What people think why THC or marijuana should remain illegal. Okay, the second most important thing that I feel is that it is considered as a gateway drug, and we have been hearing this for the past many years since we have been hearing about weed. Okay, that it is a gateway drug, and if it is legalized,
So
then
what's a
youngsters,
gateway drug for
a
us to
gateway
Yeah.
drug
understand?
is something that people use, and it is a gateway for them to move on to harder drugs, cocaine, heroin, meth, right?
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
that is what is referred to as a gateway drug, a drug that enables you to move on to much higher and harder and much potent form of drugs. That is what is a gateway drug. Okay, that it opens a gateway for you to exploit other harder drugs. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. So 45% of people who try marijuana do try harder drugs. This is a fact. So almost half of the people who have smoked marijuana in your life, at some point they have moved on to cocaine, heroin, meth, and stuff like that. Right? This is a study and this is a fact. And the argument against legalization is that if we legalize it, youngsters will have easy access to it. And if they take it, there is a more chance that half of them are going to end up cocaine or heroin drug addicts instead of marijuana because it's a gateway drug. But a
Understood.
recent study also found that instead of marijuana, cigarette is the major gateway drug. Anyone who started smoking cigarettes before the age of 15, they found impact in their brain development, and they found 60% of those users almost tried harder drugs. So the number of cigarette users who use harder drugs when they start smoking is even much higher than that of marijuana. Okay. So the counter argument is that cigarette is much more harmful than marijuana, right? It has a higher drug gateway ratio than marijuana. And the other thing
Got it.
comes is that people do not consume it because it's illegal or not legal. Okay. If you want to buy an illegal drug, you will always find someone who is happy to sell it. You will always, right? It cannot stop you.
All
Being
right.
something illegal cannot stop you to obtain it. You will find someone happy to sell it. But let's talk about why they get addicted. Okay, we talk about this 45% ratio, but
Correct.
where
Yeah.
does it come from? Why do people have this, right? So there are a lot of factors that we have identified that could be the reason for their addictions, right? Early childhood traumas, maybe genetics, maybe low social status, low self-esteem, things like that. Okay, that is the reasons for. Okay.
Anxiety or something, what I have learned from my research and the people I've known who consume or consumed it in the
Hmm.
past, a lot of them gave me this reason that, okay, it's a gateway to, like you said, gateway drugs, gateway to get into other drugs, but it's a gateway to, it's escape for them. It's
Escape
escape,
for them.
escape
Like
from
yeah.
reality. Like if they're having a heartbreak or if they're having a tough time in office or
Exactly. And that is how other drugs are also, Gaurav. So
exactly.
I can tell you, you have
Uh-huh.
heard it because a lot of people smoke weed, okay? And they do not go on to cocaine and stuff like that. But have you ever tried meth? Okay, it will feel 1,000 times better than what you feel or what you get escape from your marijuana.
Wow.
Okay, and like I mentioned, if you go to forums, there are people that say that to you. There would also be people who would talk the exact opposite. So that is also the effect that it has for some people, and they
Wow.
don't even want to touch it again. Okay, and another thing I'll tell you, if you start abusing it, okay, if you start abusing weed, you will definitely experience some episode of panic attack or anxiety attack at some point in your life. I can guarantee it
Abusing
because
as in like
abusing,
Over
misusing,
yeah,
overusing.
misusing,
overusing it.
overusing
Okay.
it. You cannot overdose on
Because
marijuana.
yeah,
That is
I
what I
have
feel.
seen people defending like even my some of my friends who are into medical field that weed is actually good, because they have to deal with so many, the burden of reading, and every time they have to be in the hospital, all of those anxiety issues, to calm themselves down, they crack
Exactly.
That
into.
is all
Exactly.
cockamamie talks. Okay, like I said, it has different effect on different people. Okay, and it's a choice of people themselves. Okay, the same affects people what they feel. Some people can also feel the same with alcohol, don't
Yeah,
they? When they
Bharat
have
bhai,
heartbreak.
before you go into that explanation, let me also put forward another scenario which is out there in the world.
Hmm,
Like we have
hmm.
known all these big rappers like Snoop Dogg, Wiz
Yeah.
Khalifa, and all that, and they smoke like anything. They smoke like an
Yeah.
ounce or 2 ounce a day. And uh, isn't it like in a way adding to their creative process? Because a lot of people give me this explanation, which might be a bullshit explanation, that it
Hmm.
adds to my creativity, it adds to my
Initially,
concentration. Even a lot
initially.
of coders that I know, hardcore coders from our field, who are like into creating deep applications and
Hmm.
something, coding something huge doing some ethical hacking or something, and they're like, if we consume marijuana or any such sort of drug, I mostly marijuana, it makes them focus more into whatever they're doing, into their creative process, into their coding thing. It makes them more concentrated in doing that. The the disturbance level is eliminated to some extent.
How? But we cannot say that it is because of weed. It could also be that they are like that, and because they smoke weed, they just feel that they are. It's because of weed, but it's basically because what's inside a human. I mean, can you just answer this? Can
Totally.
you record a podcast? Can you record this podcast while you're high? Can you do that
I
while
don't
you're high?
think so.
Can you
You
record it?
gotta,
Will you be able to speak, and will you be able to
you
get the
gotta do it,
questions and your
KG bhaiya.
thought process? Yeah,
I
your
think we
thought
gotta
process is
try
gonna
once.
run. Yeah,
We
so
gotta
your
do
thought
it.
process,
So
it's gonna run a lot. But like I said, if you regulate a lot of things, right? There are a lot of factors that, for example, you talk about Dwayne Johnson. He owns this Terramana tequila, right? And he owns the
Mhm.
brand. He posts photos and stuff like that. That he has a peg of
Right.
it every day, right? At the end of the day, he's sitting there with a tequila on the rocks in a
Kevin
glass, right?
Hart. Kevin Hart has
Yeah.
recently started a
So
tequila brand. Kendall Jenner has a
yeah.
tequila
So
brand.
all these people are consuming alcohol, right? Why are we not making the same kind of argument that we are making for marijuana for alcohol? That these people are successful and they are creative because they consume alcohol.
Hmm.
Why do we
well,
say that
True.
weed is the only one that is causing the free flow of our mind systems and alcohol cannot do that? Why is it that when you take cocaine, you feel invincible? It is that the people you have spoken to maybe are restricted only to there. There are people we have seen in a lot of movies and things like that what cocaine does to a people, right? Wolf of Wall
Correct.
Street, right? Right?
Yeah.
mm,
You
Yeah.
dial numbers quicker, you see things quicker, and it does that. Okay, we'll come to that. We'll come to other. So we were talking about gateway drugs, guys, right? That how it acts as a
Correct.
gateway drug and how they say that legalizing it would cause more people to abuse stronger form of drugs. Okay, and then we give a that addiction is not based on legalization, right? Addiction is something that is based on genetics and social status and how a person is internally, okay, how it is. So I'll give you an example of Portugal, okay. Portugal has had a very, very
Okay.
major drug problem around in 2001. They had like half of their population was drug addict, okay. What they did was, instead of what we do in the rest of the world, we criminalize these drug substances, okay. All the illegal drugs were decriminalized. If you are found with an illegal drug, no criminal action at all. Instead, major health campaign was started. Okay, so drugs were treated not as a crime but as a chronic disease. Okay, and from there, the difference that we see is that in 2001, from 44% of usage in 2012, we have a 12% usage. 12% usage in drugs, like 32% reduction, 34% reduction. Okay, reduction is reduction in cases of HIV, hepatitis. HIV and hepatitis would be due to the use of needles, right? You put heroin and stuff like that using needles.
mm,
It causes a lot of hepatitis and HIV diseases. Okay, so you look at the reduction. Okay, look at the strategy that they followed. Okay, they removed all the legal barriers. Okay, they treated it as a disease and they reduced in 12 to 13 years, they reduced with an average of like 2.0%. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Okay. So there's this human tendency, right? The more you ask people to stop or not do something, they'll end up doing it more. And once you legalize or open up things, I think same is the case with prostitution. It's like um,
Right.
illegal most of the parts, and it's very open and it's done. We know places in different cities where those things run, and it's not just hidden from anybody. It's there in news channels and there's media outlets and everywhere people know about it. So I think it's the same
Right.
mindset with drugs as well. So I think the same happened in Portugal when they legalized, when they opened it, when they regulated, people ended up using it less, and eventually things got reduced from 40-45% to 12% of consumption.
Mm.
But at the same time, I
Right.
would
I
also
would
like
not.
to go ahead, please.
I would not compare it with prostitution actually. See, the concepts are the same. Okay, what you said is correct, but prostitution would be more of a personal choice. Okay, so in countries in the third world countries, it is still forced It is not a choice of the person doing it.
I
But
mean, yeah,
drugs, yes, you're absolutely right. And it's human nature, okay? Like simply one statement. Don't think about an elephant. What does that make you do? Right?
make me
If I
think
say
of an
you
element.
don't think about an elephant, that is how it is. So yeah, exactly. That is how exactly that is. Okay. So with this, and I'll give you in our third point on why we should not legalize marijuana. I will give you another example of Switzerland. Okay, they also did something very amazing. Okay,
Okay.
so let's move on to our third point. Okay, what is the third reason why weed should not be legalized? So this is the most common one that everyone knows is that it is unhealthy and it is very addictive, and it causes a lot of issues with your lungs, with your brain development, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So on that part, we know that weed is addictive, okay? And we know mostly the addiction of weed is psychological instead of physical. So when you are going through, let's say, alcohol withdrawal, okay? If you are a chronic alcohol user, you need to be in a rehab to have medications and stuff like that to go through it because it's super painful. Your stomach pains and stuff like that can kill you. It's so painful, right? And go to other drugs. You go to cocaine, heroin, meth, any of that. All of
Whatever, yeah.
that require that you go to an addiction center, okay? And you have to be there in the rehab and get over it. Weed is not like that. You can go through it yourself. There is not a lot of physical effects that you feel. Yes, maybe you will have issues with your digestion, you will have issues focusing a bit, and that is with any drug. It's not because weed helped you to focus, it's because you ruined your original natural system with some artificial substance, and your body is taking some time to regain control of it. That is what the age is. Okay, but the counter argument against that is that only 10% of the people who smoke weed get addicted to it. Okay. However, that 10% number also comes from the increase in THC that we have seen in the past 3 decades,
True.
right? A
True.
300% rise. If we would still be having that 4% or 2% THC, I don't think it would be 10%. It would have been much lower than that if the marijuana was more potent, and it was more potent because it's not regulated. Okay, that is why there is this number. Plus, I'll give you another. You were talking about Amsterdam and like that, right? So I'll give you an
Thailand and
Amsterdam
some
example.
states in United States also have legalized it.
Yes, but if you look at the other number, okay, when we talk about this 10% weed addiction and the increasing THC content, the directly proportional relationship to it, okay, for every 1% increase in THC that is sold in Dutch coffee shops,
Mm-hmm.
are 60 more patients who are requiring rehab for marijuana nowadays. So it was not required, but now, due to given the amount of THC content in
Wow.
it, you need to go to rehab now. And for every 1% increase in Dutch coffee shops THC content, 60 more patients were reported signing into rehab for that.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
Just
Then we
what
come.
was the Dutch coffee reference? I didn't get it.
so Priya, in Amsterdam, you don't get marijuana on streets. You'll have to visit coffee shops. So there are designated coffee shops. And if you see a cafe or a coffee shop written, it means you can go inside and ask for a joint of marijuana or a
I
blunt
didn't
of
know
marijuana.
this. Really
Yeah. So it's
nice.
it's not that you can
Yeah,
smoke in the streets, on the streets or outside. You have to be to the designated places only to smoke. So it's legal, but there's this kind of a regulation
That's
out
why
there.
there is a procedure and they follow the protocol. Okay, got it.
Exactly. And what Bharat is trying to explain is if we
right.
every 1% increase in the THC content in the coffee shops, there's 60
For
people,
THC, yes, correct. Huh,
yeah, 60 people enrolling for the rehabs. So
Mm,
it's kind
got it.
of oh damn. But yeah, anyway,
right.
before I
So,
also want to take it back to a little back to the history. This has not just been,
mm,
I mean, this is not just the current situation. Drugs of these kinds have been used in the past as well, like maybe in the world wars or different kinds of wars where they used to feed this to the soldiers in some way. Would you like to talk something about that?
correct. Correct. Yeah, sure, definitely. We'll come to that. Yeah.
Okay.
So this topic that we're talking about, Gaurav, okay, the Dutch coffee
Mhm.
shop and stuff like that. This
Sure, sure.
clearly shows us that weed is addictive. Okay, there is clear data on the table that yes, we are seeing 60 more patients with every 1% increase in THC levels that are enrolling into addiction centers. So why should we legalize it? Okay, we see right here, the data is right there that 10% of the people are getting addictive. Okay, but I would again say that because it is not legal, we do not have any research. We need more money to do more research. Okay, and if you compare it with other stuff that is legal, okay, alcohol, 16% of the people who consume alcohol get addicted to it. And alcohol causes brain damage, it causes liver damage, and it causes cancer. And it kills around 3.3 million people every year. Okay. Now,
And
when you
it's
come to
not just that.
cigarettes,
It's not just alcohol, not just does that.
yeah,
It just not harms your body, it harms the society. You see
yeah,
so much of
it
social
harms you.
abuse
Yeah, yeah.
happens because of alcohol.
Violence
People,
happening and every
violence
Mm,
kind of.
happens. People get drunk and do nasty shit out there. With
right.
maybe domestic violence is one of the things. Maybe several rape cases that we'll come across or listen about have happened because of alcohol influence, and so many other things. Car accidents.
Yes, those are also, again, I would say personal choices. Okay. But one common thing that you would say is that it's going to ruin your life and your family's life if
Of
you are
course,
a drug addict of any kind. Right.
of course, of course.
Right. And if you go ahead and look at cigarettes, right, 32% of the people who are smoking get addicted to it. And it also causes cancer, it blocks your arteries, it affects every part of your bodies, right?
Sure, yeah.
Lungs, arteries, everything. And no one is suggesting that these drugs are not harmful because they are legal, right? And the statistics are much more than marijuana, right? Cigarettes alone kill like around 6 million people every year. Do we see that number around marijuana anywhere? Do we see the addiction rates of these drugs anywhere around marijuana? No, we don't. Okay. And another example, okay, I have never been to the US, but I've seen a lot of movies where we see examples of teenagers who go to stores and it is very difficult for them to buy alcohol. The concepts of fake ID cards in the US and stuff like that arises, right? Because
Yeah,
legalization would make it much, much, much more difficult to buy illegal drugs, right? Drug
true.
dealers will be gone.
100%.
Legalization will provide an incentive that drug dealers would not have a way to exploit, right? Drug dealers can sell
The
drugs
drug,
anyone.
correct.
Authorized stores, if they are told that they do not have to sell, they cannot sell it, right? Medical stores cannot sell you medicines without a prescription. So why can't we do something like that for weed, like we do for alcohol, right? You cannot go ahead, you can a 10-year-old kid cannot go ahead and buy alcohol from anywhere. A 14-year-old kid cannot, but they can easily get weed today. They can,
Wow.
right?
Wow. There's no
So
identification card
so I
needed for
feel
that.
that the best way to protect the society, yeah, right. There is the best way to protect society against these threat. Okay. Now again, marijuana is a threat. We don't know what is this, and these are just concepts that people say around. We don't have any hard-coded research for it that it increases your brain capacity or do stuff like that for you. Maybe you already had that in you. You just don't realize it, right?
Hmm.
And the first time I smoked a cigarette, I felt very good. I'll tell you, I was like in high school or something. Yeah, but I don't feel the same today. And yes, weed initially makes you think a lot of things. Do it for 10 years and then let's see what it does to you. Go and read the articles online of people who have been continually abusing it for 10 to 12 years and look at their state today. Okay, you would not
I
think
have
they are
a
creative anymore. Because,
I have a question here, Bharat bhai. You
go
said
ahead.
marijuana addiction you were comparing with cigarette smoking addiction, and then there is alcohol addiction.
Hmm.
And all of these
Right.
are correlated with the release of dopamine in a human body. Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
So
So dopamine is
consuming
yeah.
like coffee or chai, any kind of these addictions causes
Or
the release
sweets.
of dopamine. Yes, sugar is these days
Correct.
like India has become diabetic capital.
Hmm.
So anyway, so marijuana also causes the release of dopamine, and cigarettes
Yes.
also causes the release
So
of dopamine. How is this level calculated, that because cigarette smoking really harms the body and marijuana
it
percentage
depends on
is not
the
that? Yeah.
cigarette smoking does not, no, it does not, see, the harmful effect of it does not comes to the amount of chemicals it is releasing in your brain. Okay, that is an altogether different calculation. The harm of it comes from when you talk about cigarettes, you know, it has around 1,000 cancerogens, right?
Correct.
Substances that causes cancer, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, right? Okay, because we smoke it.
Hmm.
Tobacco releases around 1,000 chemicals in our body. Okay, weed does not do that much. You don't have it. Okay, wheat does
Wow.
not has that
And
many chemicals, that many harmful gases that goes in your body. And when you talk about dopamine, okay, there are a couple of these chemicals that are released into brain. Dopamine is there, oxytocin is there, okay, stuff like that. Okay, so what happens is these chemicals your body produce naturally in smaller amounts. Okay, and this is what we call as the reward center of the brain. That is what it is. The exact medical term is referred to as reward center. So when you are having sex, when you accomplish something, okay, when you complete a marathon, stuff like that, these chemicals are released in your brain to give you a sense of achievement and to motivate you continuing those great things so that you grow into your life. That is what the function of these is. Okay, so dopamine is released, there are receptors for it that receive it, process it, and yes, maybe when you have sex, it is going to receive it, it is going to give you pleasure, a feeling of pleasure and happiness, and it basically tells you to do it again, right? When you come first in a class, you get super happy, it motivates you, and that reward center basically asks you to repeat the process again. It makes you
but
addicted to it.
isn't
So if you're
marijuana
having
doing the
sex, you,
same by giving pleasure? Why isn't
yes, it is, yeah, that is why that is where the addiction theory comes from. Now what you are doing is the substances that were released into your brain with the hard work you are doing, you have completely replaced it with these man-made substances that are releasing those chemicals that make you happy artificially. Now your body is not working, you don't have to do any hard work, you don't have to read, you don't have to study, you don't have to run, you don't have to go to gym, absolutely nothing, and you can experience the same amount of pleasure. And that is
hmm.
where addiction for different substances come from. And given the
Yeah.
strength of substance, the addiction is proportional to it. So if you talk about cocaine, it releases a hell lot of amount, it will flood your brain immediately with so much of these chemicals, you will feel super happy, but it's going to fade away in 1 hour, and you will want to have another snort of cocaine in just 1 hour. Weed high is long lasting. You don't, if you are high, you would not want to be high for 6 or 7 hours, okay, after that. But when you are taking cocaine, you would want it every hour, you would choose food, you would choose water, you would choose anything over it.
Well,
If you
Bharat
give
bhai,
cocaine to a
talk.
rat,
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Continue.
I was saying that they conducted an experiment when they were testing the effects of cocaine. It is an old story, okay, during the time of Escobar, when he literally flooded Miami with his cocaine, and they were just finding out the effects of what it does to a actually, okay, before they ban it or take it, okay. So what they found is they gave it to a rat, and a rat chose life itself over cocaine. Okay, he did not want to eat or had sex or water or anything like that. He just wanted cocaine.
Wow.
So the potency of a drug determines its addiction. But like you said, every drug exactly does the same. From a cigarette to heroin to morphine, every drug does the same. They hijack your natural reward system, your receptors and everything, and they put an artificial system in place. So when you start smoking, when you, let's say I start smoking cigarettes today, okay, my brain is not getting that dopamine, and now it is addicted to it, it wants it every 1 hour, it wants that release, okay, it wants it, right? And that is how normal life works. Why we are motivated to go to the gym? Because our mind wants that release of dopamine that we are going to get when we go. That is why we feel like we should go, and that is how we work, that is why we don't procrastinate. But drugs, they induce procrastination, because you just can completely ignore your normal life, and you can take drugs and feel the same that you were feeling before, right?
Yeah, Bharat bhai, I would like to like on a lighter note, I would like to talk about that. You mentioned about release of dopamine with people who come first in their class, or do any kind
Mm.
of like gym or finish a marathon, have sex. Well, I
Yeah.
can only relate to marathon and sex.
Mhm. Like,
Wasn't
you should also relate.
very good. Yeah, of course, gym. Yeah. So, I'm
That was
joking,
smooth,
guys.
KG Bhaiya. That was
I'm
smooth.
joking. All right. So we have few minutes left for this podcast. I quickly want to talk about the use of drugs and the history in the past with
Ah, right.
army. And because this is such a vast topic, I think we need to sit down another
See,
episode.
we will have a 4 hour podcast if we talk about the use of drugs in history. But I'll give you one very good story. Okay, this
Sure,
is
sure,
about the World
please.
War, about the starting of it, how drug use was there. Okay, so we all know about the World War. Okay, we say that started in 1939, ended in 1945, and stuff like
The
that.
World War
Okay,
II, yeah.
and yeah, and we also know why it started, because of Germany. Okay, so I'll give you
Mm.
to wrap it up, very quick background. Okay, World War
Sure.
One, Austria and these countries started the war. Germany went in along with Austria, supporting them. They all lost. There was a lot of loss of life in World War One, which ended in 1919. Okay, France especially lost a lot of people. Okay, there was a
Mhm.
treaty after Germany lost in World War One. There was a treaty signed that was called the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, that basically said that Germany is responsible for the war. Their army is now going to be restricted to 100,000 soldiers, and some of their territory is going to be ceded. So in the east, some of the part was ceded to Poland. They lost Rhineland, which was their border with France and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Okay, so Germany felt very, very offended, and because it was a very proud nation, right, a global industrial power, and it was reduced to these Western powers, right? And Germany felt very humiliated, obviously, because it has lost a lot of territory. Its army was limited. It was not allowed to manufacture a lot of things. There were a lot of economic restrictions and stuff like that. That
And
caused the rise.
was Hitler on power at that time?
Hitler was a soldier in the army in World War One. He had
Coming
no
into
power,
power, I
absolutely.
think. Yes.
Yes. Now, when we go into 1922-23, from there, Hitler's rise in power started. He placed strategically, he removed himself from the front end lines and placed himself in the back end management offices like that strategically. Okay. And from there, he diagnosed that Germany was actually suffering from a sense of political and economic insecurity and insensitivity. And what they actually needed was a sense of unity and economic security. So he started making promises like state employments, building the autobahns, and stuff like that, right? He step by step started breaking the norms of Versailles Treaty, which restricted their army. They cannot manufacture military weapons and stuff like that. So slowly by slowly, he started doing all that. So by 1930, he started building tanks. Okay, his Panzer forces increased, his army increased, and he was sort of testing the waters. In 1935, he introduced a compulsive military service for everyone. In 1936, he took back Rhineland, that was the ceded territory in World War One. Okay, so these are all the steps that he followed slowly, slowly in baby steps, testing the
To rise
waters
into
on how the
power, yeah.
Western powers are going to react. Okay.
Sure.
And the Western powers did not react because they thought that they have humiliated Germany, that Germany is a big nation, a proud nation, and it might want to come to the global stage again. So they kept quiet. They let them do what Hitler was doing. That was the first mistake caused by them. Okay. So World War actually started in 1999, but the things for it, they were in motion from 1936. Okay. In
Hmm.
1938, Hitler marched into Austria. He was born in Austria. Okay. So they welcomed him with open hands. There was no resistance at all. He just walked into it and everything was accepted. Austria wants to be with Germany. Okay. And then slowly, slowly, he took the control of the Rhineland. Okay. And now the Western powers thought that he is gonna move into Czech Republic and Poland and he's gonna start a war. So there was this British Prime Minister at that time, Neville Chamberlain. He flew to Germany 3 times in 1938 to try to talk to Hitler to stop invading the Czech Republic. Okay, because a lot of territory was ceded to the Czech Republic in the First World War, and he wanted it back.
Okay.
So there was an agreement signed. That is what is known as the Munich Conference today, right? You might have heard of the term Munich
Sure, yeah.
Conference. So that was signed between France, Italy. Italy, Benito Mussolini, that was also a dictator who
Mussolini.
played a
Yes,
major role
yes.
in World War II, right, with Hitler. So
Yeah.
yeah, so they all signed. So the Britain, Germany, France, and Italy, they all signed this Munich Agreement in which they said that Germany can take back the German speaking areas of the Czech Republic, but nothing else. Okay, it cannot invade the entire
Mm.
country. And Chamberlain also signs another agreement separately with Hitler that Germany and Britain will not go to war ever. Okay, that they will not go to war ever. He convinces Hitler that they won't fight. Okay, and then Chamberlain goes back to the UK and he is waving that agreement there, right? That
Yeah.
see what I accomplished. I have a signed agreement from Hitler,
Got a
then we are
deal.
not gonna go at the war. Yeah, that I got a deal. And he was treated as like a hero. 6 months after that, Hitler invaded the entire Czech Republic and he invaded Poland as well.
Oh God.
Okay. 6 months after that, he invaded both the places. Okay. Now, the biggest problem is now, if you know about the Europe's map, okay, we have Germany. On the east part, if you go, you have Poland, and from there, Ukraine, and then the
Right.
Soviet, Russia, all of that. Okay.
Yeah.
So now that Russia, his his biggest problem was he was not very concerned about France and Britain. Okay, because he thought that they would never go into war with him. No one wants another war, a major war. Okay. His main concern was Stalin. Now you might have heard about Stalin. He was a very bad man,
Stalin.
a
Yeah.
very bad dictator for Russia and
Soviet. Soviet
Soviet.
Union.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Joseph Stalin was his ideal enemy. Okay, his ideal enemy was Stalin. Okay, and the fear was that if he attacks Poland, what the reaction of Soviets will be. Okay, so what he does it, he goes ahead and signs a pact with the Soviets that they would, both of them would not attack each other, and they have already formed a pact that they would both invade Poland and they would divide the country together, half half. Okay, now after the invasion of Czech Republic, these Britain and France, they draw a line in the sand that if Hitler invades Poland, we are going to declare war. Okay, so after
Mm.
in 1939, Hitler invades Poland, and these countries they declare war. That is where we see is the start of the World War. Actually, okay, after all of this, after he has already taken back Rhineland, he has invaded Poland, he has taken Czech. After all this, he has taken Austria. After four countries are dissolved, after that the World War actually starts. Okay.
So actually, they were waiting for him to invade Poland before declaring
Yes, correct.
war.
So
Okay.
yes, they did. Yes, so they were waiting on. He invaded Poland, and 16 days later, the Soviets also invaded Poland from the east. They invaded from
Mm.
west. They invaded from east, and everyone was at a loss on what the hell happened. What the fuck did it happen? How did the Soviets and the Germans
Forgotten
come
what.
together? Yes.
Mm.
Right. So it was that time that then Neville Chamberlain was fired. We had the new British Prime Minister came in, right?
Okay.
We all know about him. Okay. So now the problem, now we come to the drug story actually. Now you have a
Sure.
brief history. Okay, what happened?
Sure.
Now, since these guys declared war, British, now he had to fight war on two fronts. Now, one thing you should know that Hitler had a lot of panzer tanks, okay, a lot of artillery, a lot of motor power, okay, because that was the time of horses. And if you have tanks, then you're going to win. Hitler had tanks. When he invaded Poland, their horses were no match for Hitler's tanks. But they put up a big fight, and Hitler lost a lot of his artillery, a lot of his tanks, armored vehicle in that war. Okay, and it was very clear that Germany is not ready for a war with Britain and French both. Now, okay, that is the start of 1939. Now we know
Okay.
later that he did it and he won it, and he did it in a very good way. But in that moment, everyone knows that Germany is not ready. The journals are not advising Hitler. They are coming up with plans that are bound to fail so that they do not invade. They are very vocal about it that I do not want to fight a war. No one is ready with Hitler to fight the war with these two countries. Okay.
With
Now,
France.
with France and Britain. With France and
France,
Britain.
Britain.
When we say
Okay.
Western powers in this movement till 1942, it will mean only Britain and France. US is not there till 1942. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. US came later.
Okay. Now, they had a good army. Germany built a good army, but they lost a very major part of it in the Poland invasion. And they cannot go against the French. French had the trained, best supplied, biggest army in Europe. Okay, that was the
Wow.
situation of French in that moment. Okay, they were far better equipped than Germany. But what they did was, okay, there came a period when what France did on the Franco-German border, the border between, they built
Mhm.
what is a line called the Maginot Line. That is like a huge barrier created between the two countries because in the First World War, France experienced a lot of bloodshed. Okay, a lot of their people died. So they created that line to prevent it in future if something like that happens. And that is what they did. They dig in instead of attacking on charging with a bigger army, bigger supplies, and everything better than Germany at that moment. What they did was they went there, they dig in on the Maginot Line, and they just sat there, taking an action on not to attack. Okay, that they will not attack Germany because they had a lot of blood loss in the first, and they are going to utilize this management line and stuff like that, and they are going to stop them there when they attack, but they are not going to fight it. So there was a time in 1939 when this war was called the phony war, because they were
Okay.
not attacking, and Hitler was just thinking what to do, because he had nothing to do actually. If they would have attacked then and done it, there would have been no world war. It would have been over then and there. Okay, but they didn't do it, right? So British
So,
Expeditionary Force, for Britain force, what was sent from Britain, BEF and the France forces, they were all together sitting there. Okay, in the First World War, what happened was, if you look at the map of Germany, there is Germany on the left of it, on the west of it there is France, on top of it there is Belgium, and on top of it there is Holland. In the First World War, what they did was they went from Holland and Belgium, and from the north they entered France. That was their strategy. That is
wow.
what they did, and they lost. It was a very bad strategy, because they had a lot of army deployed on that lines. Okay, and in the Second World War also, the generals were suggesting the same strategy to Hitler, and he was like, we have already done that, what is the point of it? Okay, so there was this another general who came up with a plan. And from here, the technique of blitzkrieg, that is very important, one of the most important, you can say, events or extraordinary events of World War II. Okay, so what he suggested is that instead of capturing Holland and Belgium and then moving into France from there, on the Franco-German border there is a forest called Forest of Ardennes. It's very dense. He
Mhm.
suggested a plan to move his army from there, and this was totally unexpected by the French forces. Okay, because it's a forest, you cannot move tanks from a forest. How would you do that?
Yeah.
Did that. So there is a border town called Sedan in France, okay, on the Franco-German border. So what happens is, the action that they would send a smaller force on the Belgian Holland border, where the British Expeditionary Force and the French forces are already in a very, to create a diversion. But their main attack is going to come from the Forest of Ardennes, which is not expected. Okay. Now, when they started lining up, the convoy was so big that from the Ardennes to the entire Franco-German border, there was a military gridlock created. And the
Wow.
reconnaissance fighters, for they flew, they saw it, they informed it to their generals. The generals did not even believe that it is possible that Hitler would try something like that. They rejected the theory. They had dive bombers, everything. It was such a gridlock. There was no place to move. There was a traffic jam of Hitler's tanks. If France wanted, they would have decimated the army in 2 days with just aerial bombing, nothing else, just aerial bombings.
Okay.
Okay, this is just a sitting ducks. They did not even believe it, and they did not do it. Okay, and this is one of the biggest failure of France in World War One. They did not attack. Okay, now what happened is
In
that
World War
they were
II, actually.
expecting German army. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were expecting that the German army would take about 2 weeks to reach the town of Sedan, the border town of Sedan. Okay. Germany was able to reach the border of town of Sedan in 3 days. Okay.
Wow.
In 25% of the time that they expected. And
They were so
and
damn
they did
ready
not
for
know
this.
what to do.
Hmm.
Yes, they were actually not ready, but the time that they spent just sitting there, not attacking, right? When the 8 or 9 months that Hitler had the time to plan his strategy out, his generals had a time to plan, and they did, and they planned a very good strategy. So I told you about the technique of blitzkrieg. Now I'll tell you what exactly it means. It means to attack an enemy with such and such speed, and to surround and take over control, that the enemy would not even have an option to recover or defend himself. I mean, before
Right.
they can even understand what is happening, you take
Hmm.
control of everything. Okay, and how it is achieved. Okay, so there are three key factors. Okay, there is your brutal aerial bombardment. Okay, so the German Air Force, that is called the Luftwaffe. Remember these terms. We will continue in the next podcast from there. Okay,
Sure,
so the
but
Luftwaffe.
before we move there, like you mentioned that the French army expected
Yeah,
or
coming
estimated
coming
them,
there.
yeah,
Yeah,
to come
coming
in
there.
2 weeks. Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. So blitzkrieg, what they do is brutal aerial bombardment, very fast moving tanks, and a very quick and a superhuman army, fierce militia. Okay.
Mm.
Now the third part is the one where we have to notice. Okay. So we know that the panzers and the tanks and the planes can fly and move at high speed. Okay. But the attack that they were expecting, you mentioned, right? That they would need, they go in there 3 weeks. So
in three
There is a
days.
very strong methamphetamine. Okay, you know what methamp is, right? Everyone has seen Breaking Bad, right?
Breaking Bad, yeah.
So
Heisenberg.
I haven't.
a very, yeah, Heisenberg, yeah. So methamphetamine, or you call it as crystal meth. That is a very
Yes,
potent drug.
that I'm aware of. Correct.
Crystal meth, okay. That the scientific chemical name is methamphetamine.
Krishna,
Okay.
yes.
So methamphetamine, that is a very powerful drug. It makes you feel super good, superhuman. You don't need to eat or sleep, or you can just keep on moving. Okay. So in Germany, there is a drug called Pervitin that was sold during that time, during 1930s and 40s, and it was over a counter drug sold to civilian populations. Pervitin. Okay. So you can go to a medical store and you can just pick up Pervitin, take it, and you will feel a lot better. You will have a lot less stress. You will feel a lot less anxious. You will be able to do a lot more work, stuff like that. Okay, it makes you
Wow.
feel superhuman, and that was for civilian population. And during the World War, when they decided they are going to Ardennes and to attack, it was distributed to the army as candies. Okay, as candy.
Nice.
As
Now,
candies.
yes, as candies, exactly, as take pill as candy. Now imagine, Gaurav. Okay, you have one person. Okay, who is super high on crystal meth. He has a gun. Okay, and he can go and shoot anyone that are his orders. Imagine that drug level of army on a couple of 100,000 soldiers, high on meth,
Wow.
walking into a town with their guns. It's a militia that does not needs to eat, rest, or sleep. They moved 3 days and 3 nights continuously and reached Sedan in just 3 days, 3 days and 3 nights instead of the 2 weeks that was
Wow.
This
expected.
is some real
And
shit.
yes, and if you look at, I mean, it's good. I mean, who wants to die in a war? If you can avoid, I mean, you would be ready any day to take the side effects of that drug instead of dying in a war. So it's much better, right? And it is a very well known fact that before this fight started, the morale of the German army was very low because they were against a very powerful allies forces, right? Allied forces were very powerful. France was very powerful at that time, and the morale was super low. But once they take this Pervitin, their morale goes just skyrockets, right? They feel superhuman. Nothing can defeat them. Nothing can kill them. They are God. And that is the feeling that they go through in a fight. And imagine 300,000 soldiers in tanks and
Wow.
planes and guns in their hand, walking with that mentality into a battlefield. I'll tell you, they took 3 days, and within the next 2 days, the general who was driving this assault, he took the decision to move further in France. 5 days, in 5 days, okay, the French army, who was at the moment considered to be the most well equipped, well trained army in the entire Europe,
Yeah.
the British, the French Prime Minister calls the British Prime Minister and tells him that the war is lost, that France is lost
Mm.
in 5 days of the start of the war.
Wow.
Okay, so that is the effect a drug can have on situations like this, right? I mean, they did not even give the French to react. The Pervitin just saved their life. A militia needs to rest that does not need to sleep. Who can go against them?
I mean, I definitely need to take
Hmm.
some plans after this episode because this is such a heavy episode and so much information
Yeah,
that's
deep
flown into
insights
this.
to some few, like the way he illustrates any story, Bharat bhai, I'm gonna acknowledge it. It's like I'm asking आपने shirt कहाँ से ली, and he goes back to from the moment he started walking from the street to and he saw something. So it's like that kind of a journey. It
So
was
when
like
he
listening
first
to
thought,
Yeah,
a
I'm very sorry
well-read.
about it.
no,
No,
no, no,
you
no.
should not be sorry. I'm actually appreciating it. It was like I was listening to a well-read history lecturer, but who is alpha in the college, and you don't have an option but to study before and before listening to his lecture. So it was that kind of level.
Wow, it's just like listening to Dave Chappelle's comedy, but you need to do some homework before that.
Yeah, you cannot
This,
get the joke if you're not prepared. Sorry, that it was like that.
yes.
Mhm.
So it was so great. I mean, we learned. I think
Yeah,
there's
man.
so much more to talk about this World War and other conspiracy
Yeah.
theories and drugs. an involvement of it going forward. But I'm sure this is just one part of it, and we are going to do many more episodes with Bharat Bhai. So, Priya, before we wrap up the episode, would you like to shoot the question that you had?
Actually, the question was related to one conspiracy theory, which is Area 51. And I'm surely looking forward for the next part of this series so that I can
I
ask
mean,
that
yeah.
question. So we need.
In fact, quickly we can touch upon that part. I mean, if Bharat, if you can tell us, the thing is, like we did talk about it, like the alien sightings started late in 1940s and early 50s, something.
Yes. So
So,
a lot of
yeah.
people actually don't know about it, okay? But
Mhm.
the alien phenomena directly coincides with our development and use of nuclear weapons, okay? That is one theory that we should explore
Wow.
more deeply in our
Wow,
next episode. But
really?
Sure.
Yeah, we should.
yes, it is. Yes.
Mm.
We started seeing these UFOs. Okay, so I'll tell you, during the end of the war, okay, there was this US night squadron flying over, and they saw what they refer to as some Foo Fighter. Okay, Foo Fighter, I don't know what that means, but that is the term I know. They refer to as that because they did not recognize what it was. And 2 years later, there was this private pilot who was flying, and he saw some saucer shaped objects flying over. That was in 1947. Okay, and that is where the story starts. That is once his story got to the media, they quickly came up with the terminology flying saucer or flying cup or something like
Mm.
that. Okay, and that is where it
Unidentified
all
flying
started. Yes.
objects.
And
Yeah.
from there, so if you look at it, 1945, there was when we started nuclear technology. Okay, and that is where this all started. So the Cold War period where we tested so many nuclear weapons, it also coincides with these events. Okay, that is where we see most of the UFO and alien and Area 51, all that related activities, Project Majestic 12, Project Blue Book, all these United States government projects. So there are a lot of stories about this, man. I mean, there are stories that are so credible that yeah, we should discuss more on it.
I think we should do a second
Yeah.
episode just on alien sightings and
Definitely.
Yeah, we
and the
can
things
do,
around
yeah, alien sightings, a bit of space, and do we believe in aliens? That is an important topic, a
It's
good
very
topic that I
important.
would like to discuss. Yeah, do
Of
we
course,
do you
of
think there
course.
are aliens? That is a good topic.
I am
I
looking forward for this episode. I mean, the Area 51 one.
Sure. So I think, yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. And I hope that this is going to put some listeners to thought after they listen to this podcast. They might just go back, do some research again on marijuana and drugs usage and different things. We keep saying in a funnier way that, okay, marijuana should be legalized. What are we doing? The government should legalize it. It's getting legalized everywhere else in the world. But there's another side of it, that it adds to the addiction, and ill effects of it impacts your health and
Correct.
so many other things. So there are obviously two sides of a coin, and we need to explore every side of it. And I think we're gonna do more of it in the next episode, talk more about it. So just stay hooked, stay tuned. And I think this is one of the finest episodes that we have recorded. Priya, what do you say?
Yeah, and I was actually exhausted because of the current road situation and weekend working situation. But uh, on contrary, I really got up from all of that exhaust, everything. But thank you. I'm gonna say, like, Bharat Bhai was really one of a gem guest we have till date.
Sure.
So
And I think we can leverage him for another 5 episodes if we can.
yeah, we surely should. We
We
surely
surely
should.
should.
Definitely, guys.
Mhm.
Definitely, I'll have a lot
Thank
more to
you.
share.
Thank you so much, Bharat Bhai, for coming. I
Thank you,
am
Gaurav.
sure we're going to record another parts of
Definitely,
continuation
man.
of this episode. And everybody who's listening, send us your questions. If you have something for Bharat Bhai, something more for conspiracy theories, alien sightings, drug related, World War related. There's so many things out there in the world that we don't know about it. Instead, we keep watching the daily soaps, Priya. Stop it and watch some documentaries. So that's it. I think we should wrap it here and see you again next week, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye, Bharat
guys.
Bhai.
Thank you for
Bye,
having me
everyone.
again. I'll see you
Sure.
soon.
Honor speaking to you. Thank you, everyone.
Same here,
Bye.
Gaurav.
Bye.
Bye, Priyanka. Bye, Gaurav.
Bye.
Hey there, thanks for listening to the podcast. Just in case you liked the episode, do leave us a rating and follow us on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to. It will be of great help if you share the podcast with your friends and tell them what podcast you're consuming. And you can also send us your questions, suggestions, feedbacks, and AMAs at pleasesaythatagainmate@gmail.com, or you can DM us on our Instagram. Our handles are there in the description of the show. And with that, I'll take your leave and see you again next week.